Tunde stood quietly in the modern living room, staring at the CCTV monitor he had just installed. The house was peaceful and silent, yet something about the glowing screen made him feel uneasy, as if the camera was watching more than it was supposed to. In the kitchen, Sade continued cooking dinner while occasionally glancing at the small CCTV monitor placed on the counter. She tried to focus on her cooking, but the strange silence in the house made her nervous. Later that night, Tunde and Sade sat together on the bed, both staring at the monitor without speaking. The screen flickered slightly, and the strange movement on it made the house suddenly feel unfamiliar. Suddenly, the CCTV footage changed. On the monitor, the living room looked bright and sunny, almost like it was morning, even though outside the real house it was still dark and quiet. Confused and alarmed, Tunde quickly grabbed a flashlight and rushed downstairs. He carefully checked the front door locks, his heart pounding as he wondered if someone had somehow entered the house. Outside, near the gate, Sade hesitated before stepping into the compound. The street was quiet, but the air felt heavy, as if someone, somewhere, was watching the house. Determined to keep his family safe, Tunde began installing extra motion sensors around the living room. He tightened the screws carefully, making sure every corner of the house was protected. Later, the couple sat on the sofa in the living room, whispering nervously to each other. The glowing CCTV monitor in front of them felt less like security and more like a warning. Suddenly, the screen showed something terrifying. The footage revealed a man slowly entering the house while holding a knife, even though the real front door was still locked. Tunde quietly moved down the staircase again with his flashlight, scanning every corner of the living room carefully. Every shadow suddenly looked suspicious. From the kitchen doorway, Sade peeked toward the living room. Her eyes searched the darkness, hoping that the strange footage they saw was only a camera glitch. Back in the bedroom, the two of them stared at the monitor again. A dark shadow moved across the screen, but nothing moved inside the real house. Tunde wiped the sweat from his forehead and pressed the alarm button on the security system. Something about the footage felt too real to ignore. He walked through the living room slowly, checking every window and every door once again to make sure everything was tightly locked. In the kitchen, Sade carefully placed plates on the counter, but she kept glancing nervously toward the living room, unable to shake the strange fear inside her. Meanwhile, Tunde adjusted the camera angles on the CCTV system. The glow from the monitor lit up his face as he tried to understand how the system could be showing something impossible. The couple sat together again, whispering their fears and trying to make sense of the strange things they were seeing on the screen. Then the monitor showed the front door slowly opening again, and the shadow of a man stepped quietly into the house. Tunde grabbed his flashlight and searched the living room cupboards and drawers, hoping to find something that could explain the mysterious footage. At the staircase, Sade gripped the railing tightly, listening carefully for any sound of footsteps coming from below. Inside the kitchen, both of them whispered nervously while watching the living room, afraid that the next moment would reveal something even worse. Then the monitor showed something shocking. The man holding the knife slowly turned toward the camera, and the face on the screen looked exactly like Tunde. Tunde began pacing around the living room, his mind racing with fear and confusion as he tried to understand what the camera was showing. Sade stood frozen near the sofa, staring at him with wide eyes, unsure if the camera was lying or trying to warn them. Together, they leaned closer to the monitor, studying every small detail of the footage to see if they had misunderstood something. Suddenly, behind the future version of Tunde on the screen, a tall, dark figure slowly appeared, its glowing eyes barely visible in the shadows. Tunde slowly walked through the hallway again with his flashlight, checking every corner of the house for anything unusual. Near the window, Sade looped outside into the quiet garden, hoping to see that everything was still normal outside the house. The couple sat together once more, whispering anxiously as they wondered if the camera was somehow showing tomorrow's events. On the monitor, the future version of Tunde began walking slowly up the staircase with the knife, while the dark shadow followed closely behind him. Tunde suddenly froze, realizing the terrifying possibility that the camera might not be broken at all, but might actually be showing the future. Sade rushed toward him and placed her hands on his shoulders, trying to calm him down as fear filled the room. When Tunde looked into the mirror, he saw his own reflection staring back at him, the same face that appeared in the frightening footage. Holding a candle, Sade carefully walked through the dark living room, her eyes searching every corner as if expecting something to appear. Together they stood halfway up the staircase, watching the living room carefully while holding each other tightly. On the monitor, the future Tunde slowly lifted the knife, while the shadowy figure stood behind him like a silent master. Tunde dropped to his knees beside the CCTV monitor, replaying the footage again and again as he desperately tried to understand the warning. Sade held his hand tightly, whispering that they needed to leave the house before something terrible happened. Standing by the window with his flashlight, Tunde stared at the empty street outside, wondering if the nightmare had already begun. Outside, the quiet modern house stood under the dark night sky, its CCTV cameras glowing faintly, silently watching as the future slowly crept closer.